colleagues from our region, but also colleagues from what we call Old Europe. So this is an interesting experience for us. But what I'd like to draw your attention to is the fact that as the Ministry of the State Treasury, we're trying to build professional partnership relationships with market participants, so with pension funds. Sometimes this is somewhat painful, but I think it's a learning opportunity for both parties, and I hope that you gentlemen will appreciate how the ministry is changing its approach to how we operate on the capital markets. So these partnership relations also are with the investment banks. We're very keen on banks becoming our partners and for them to support the region with their coverage and with analytical reports being published. We want them to support the Polish stock exchange with their trading operations such that we can have the liquidity as a result of these institutions being present. And so we want that liquidity to be on the Polish stock exchange, and we want to bolster that. Despite all of the negative and adverse comments and remarks, we're trying to increase the transparency of our companies. We can say that a large number of the WIG 20 players come from the state treasury's stables, but we're trying to improve the infrastructure on the markets. We have investment banks. We also have large legal firms that are supporting the state treasury as well as companies. This is interesting in terms of creating new products for the capital markets. I think we've been able to attract some global investment funds, and we hope that they're going to treat Poland as a hub for their operations, so for their regional operations. So the ministry is a unique place. It's one of the very few government agencies where they have an investor relations department, and we're quite busy by participating in road shows, meeting with investors who are interested in talking about Poland, about the region, about Polish companies. So this is a process that was commenced by Krzysztof Walenczak and Minister Grad, and we've taken this baton and we're continuing it. And this is something that the investor community has appreciated and is appreciating, the fact that we're quite open from our side. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, and Pavel, I think on top of global institutions and global investors, I think it's worthwhile to remember about global media. And at the same time, I'd like to welcome a great friend of the Polish financial markets, Mr. David Sheriff from The Economist, who for years, and not so long ago when Warsaw was becoming more well-known in the regional plane, has been supporting and is a fan of its actions, and we hope that you'll add to my salutations for David, so that you join me in saluting David here today. So summing up this discussion, I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for participating in this discussion. So now I'd like to try to formulate a few conclusions, and then I'll ask all of you to give your final commentary, and then I'll ask the minister to give us the final word as a pastor. So I'd like to give this commentary in English for our international guests.
What made Warsaw Stock Exchange unique in the arena of Central Eastern Europe is indeed the role of the government. The government, as has been said numerous times here by just about all of the panel participants, has been the most vibrant animator and creator historically of capital markets in Poland. Capital markets in Poland that are now no longer a domestic phenomena, but are of increasing importance in the entire region of Central and Eastern Europe, from the perspective of capital seekers. If Poland has done something better than all other members of our post-communist, if you will, society of nations, it is indeed the creation of capital markets thanks to long-term vision and discipline of the government, represented by Minister Tamborski. And again, thank you for what you do to further that mission. No longer a domestic phenomenon, no longer an important platform for regional issuers, but an increasingly important platform for global capital. This has been another theme that has been emphasized here. Warsaw Stock Exchange attracts all largest capital pools of the planet. Yesterday there was an award ceremony that is a part of this event, where all largest capital providers in the world were present or indeed rewarded. The issue that remains to be a challenge going forward is corporate governance. Corporate governance, particularly as it relates to the companies in which state treasury still remains a stakeholder. Corporate governance is evolving, needs improvement based on the input of Polish pension funds, a very active contributor, not only in terms of capital provision, but also in terms of continuous evolution of standards of Polish capital markets. As a result, it's important to emphasize, as our colleague from the National Depository has mentioned, the Warsaw Stock Exchange, thanks to these efforts, is now, as far as the region, the most liquid, the most vibrant, the most active capital market, increasingly again becoming not only important center to the economy of Poland, but indeed a heart of regional economy. This is where this is the market where the equity culture is being created. This is the market where we have a global community of investors, community of issuers, community of regulators, community of media. And indeed, it is my honor and a great pleasure to welcome you all to being a member of such a community. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you for visiting Warsaw, and I wish you best of luck, and I look forward to seeing you all next year. By the position.
In terms of a short summary, I'd like to say the most recent years have brought much better cooperation with the State Treasury Ministry. It's not easy, as was said previously. Sometimes we're on the opposite sides of the barricade, but it's a constructive set of cooperation, and we know where we are. In terms of crafting a long-term strategy, in terms of how we manage companies, well, this is a threat that exists in every ministry, in every country, when the political powers change, the strategy may change, because if it's not written as the law, if it's just best practice, that's agreed between investors. Well, when the staff at the ministry changes, well, we can say that the institutional memory is eliminated basically to zero. And this is one of the biggest threats to the process, the political changes. So, to summarize, I'd like to walk through 4 points, which according to me are a type of prescription for privatization. So we talk about a privatization plan. This is what Mr. Tamborski says. We have to have a roadmap in terms of what should happen, where, when, and how. Under that privatization plan, we have to understand the accountability of the seller as well as the buyers, as well as the managers, that we're talking about meeting different conditions. There has to be responsibility for the results, for the people, for all of the stakeholders. And within the framework of these first 2 points, we have a third point, which Mr. Walenczak has emphasized, and I think this is where we have the most to do. This is the corporate governance issue. where I think the interests are still grading against one another. We don't have our own platform yet where we are able to achieve a single conclusion. Because if we're successful in having a privatization plan, if we have the feeling of accountability, we have the highest level of corporate governance, then the development of the capital markets is going to be pushed up to a totally new level. And thank you very much for listening to me. So we were talking about privatization strategy and Polish experience. That was the title of this panel. Before Tauron went public, prior to August 2009, a lot of work was being done to consider whether or not we should have a strategic investor. I think the fact that Tauron was taken public, I think this is a very good decision. I think there's some room for us to improve in the field of corporate governance. So Tauron met last year some 170 investors. So we had 120 meetings, so we're meeting a lot with the market, and the transparency of the company is quite large. We're an open company, and I think this is one of the great strengths, and this is one of the areas in which we're going to be able to improve and excel in the field of corporate governance. Thank you very much. During the panel, we've talked about creating a regional financial hub in Warsaw, having in mind the success, and this is how we should treat this subject of Polish privatization. But we also have globalization as a threat as well as an opportunity. And I'd like to say, or express my opinion, that globalization is an opportunity insofar as we demonstrate that we're able to distinguish ourselves as a Polish market with respect to other global markets, with respect to other venues which are endeavoring to become these regional hubs. If we can distinguish ourselves in terms of having a stable economy that's rapidly growing, a stable banking sector, a stable set of infrastructure where we respect the law, then I think globalization is and will be an opportunity for the Polish capital market as well as for the Polish economy. And at this time, it's very important to standardize and enhance infrastructure as well as to strengthen the Polish capital market entities such that in the framework of globalization we should be an agent and not that's orchestrating this and not being affected. We can also say that Polish privatization is perceived as success, and this contributes to the overall image. I don't think there are very many people who would say that would try to undermine the sense of privatization or would put a question mark on privatization processes and the prices achieved in these privatization processes. Of course, there are some problems with some investors who turn out to be not to have so much credibility, or their in-house problems reflect on the privatized companies. We also have some social issues, but generally speaking, privatization, the success of privatization is seen also in the fact that it's perceived as privatization, and we see more and more people who are trying to say that they created that success in privatization. They're not trying to run counter to the privatization. So I hope that this is a response to the fears concerning the continuity of this process. One of the elements of our mission as a ministry is to develop and to care for the development of the domestic capital markets. I've addressed this issue several times today, and the state treasury has a large role to play in this development. And I hope that our accountability and our role will fall, not because we're going to be less active, but basically the private market has something to say. I hope the private players as well as the global players, encouraged by the size of our capital market, and as a result they're going to grow and become more and more important. And that means that we will no longer have to shoulder the brunt of this burden.